Welcome, and today we're going to go on a little quest back to 1902 in a balloon in San Francisco. Now, this little piece of film was put out by the Thomas Edison Company. I wasn't aware that he had his hand in films, but very interesting footage for 1902. Really, really fascinating. And what originally led me down this quest was some photos that Martin showed on Flat Earth British, and I'll get to those in a bit. Really, really fascinating photos of the earthquake in San Francisco. And you had two mass events in San Francisco. In the 1850s, you had the Great Fire that pretty much, levels the city in the strangest way. And again, we'll get to that. And then in the early 1900s, you have the Great Earthquake that, finishes off a lot of these amazing buildings of what appear to be from a much older era. And even in 1902, the build out of the city is absolutely amazing, as you can see here. I mean, the architectural and engineering feats for the time are perfect. I mean, absolutely perfect. This was a city at its peak, and we would experience these two catastrophes within 50 years of each other, the fire and the earthquake, that pretty much reduces this city, levels this city, and we're left with neighborhoods that resemble what we see in the recent California fires. Fires that reduce entire areas into simply street, and everything turns to powder except the trees. And we continuously see this pattern, as you can see in this photo. So 1906, the ruins of San Francisco, Nob Hill in the foreground, from Lawrence captive airship. So really a lot of airship activity going on. And for this time period, this has to be a very long exposure in this balloon to capture this resolution. And I've never seen such an amazing older photograph, but even more so, this reminds me of either Hiroshima or the wildfires in California, or, all over the world. We've seen these strange wildfires all over the world. But now, again, the trees. I mean, this stone or brick building, all of them, in fact, whatever we can see, has been reduced. And yet, the power poles are all intact. The remnants of trees. In fact, there was a little patch of trees here, as you can see. Everything reduced except the vegetation. And this amazing architecture. And as we could see in that last photo by Thomas Edison in the balloon, this city was built out completely. and reduced to ruins. And much of this city looks again like Hiroshima or the ruins of Palmyra in Syria. Absolute ruins from a fire and an earthquake. But I don't think so. And I also want you to notice the layout. Just the amazing, amazing engineering. And anybody who's ever experienced surveying, I mean, the process just to survey, a small, small piece of land is a job, let alone to lay out an entire city in this fashion. And so how many times have our cities been rebuilt? We see photos, a lot of these old mud flood photos, where they build parking lots and discover, entire buildings. It's as if, a whole civilization existed and was completely buried. And even under here, there could be a whole another city underneath this city. And that's what we're discovering. And discoveries in the Midwest of the United States have recently showed this, even on mainstream news outlets. Entire cities that have been completely buried, and we're walking amongst them right now. But in this case, it has just been leveled and will be rebuilt. And this is within a very short amount of time that we can see. I had no idea, I had no idea that this city had been completely built out, leveled, and rebuilt within a little over 100 years. And much of this architecture is gone. And now I just want to have a little look at this amazing, Tartarian group that's been formed on Reddit, again shared by Martin on Flat Earth British. And this is absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, these are buildings of the old world, 1905, the Lone Building. Now, what I found fascinating about this was these silly designations. Once again, I'm always fascinated with the silly designations of these buildings. And so this one, like this is a bank. Like this would be the best way to build a bank. Absolutely amazing and complete overkill. And this doesn't look like a bank. And I would be very suspect a bank that was built this way. And it's absolutely beautiful and had another purpose. The Alamo, which I touched on a prior video, and what I showed in my prior video is that this little Spaniard top flare has been added later, and we can see in a lot of the older lithographs what this looked like. And this was a Greek-Roman style building that has been turned into a Spaniard look to hide its true history. But there are other buildings, fortunately, that still have their original look. Now in France, and again, I don't believe it was just a cathedral. Look at this amazing, amazing Greek-Roman Parthenon-style building in Germany. Beautiful. Vienna, Austria. Now this was a fascinating thing, and we see this style in all parts of the world. And, we don't build like this anymore. And this is just an amazing building. To me, it's like a greenhouse. It's like utilizing, the sun, and you can have atrium in here, and it's just super futuristic. And we don't see it anymore, and most of them had been torn down. Now, here is my favorite designations. The post offices. How many stamps did you sell to build yourself a post office like this? Absolutely ridiculous. And, I think we all knew. We really all did know. But I think we needed permission in some way to believe it. Again, how many stamps would they have to sell to build a building like this? The post office has always struggled. Here they were still delivering mail on horses, and the price of a stamp was I don't know. You could probably get a few for a penny back then. And just amazing that in 1905, which again, when would you? Again, we have to be perfectly logical here. It's 1905, and how old could this building be? How young could this building be? At the youngest, this building is 100 years old. No, this is not a post office. Again, in Boston, in 1885. 1885. This is your United States Post Office. Think about your post office today. Think about it well. The place you like least to be standing in line. The most uncharismatic building you could go into today in present times. And really, it doesn't need to be any more than what it is in present times. Maybe a dozen offices, maybe a little warehouse in the back. What was this? A hotel? Probably a hotel. And here you can see construction. What do the new people do? The new people build with wood. That was as good as it got. Wood and simple stonework, but not this. Not this. Now here is the Woolworth building. Woolworth, New York City. And at one point this was actually the biggest building in America. Look at this thing. This is an American castle. An American skyscraper castle. And I do wish I could zoom in more. This thing is amazing. Look at this thing. And again, from the base, maybe walking around on the sidewalk, you might just think this is normal, although I don't think so. You could not appreciate the glory of this building, just like the Tribune building in Chicago, until you look at it at the top. Absolutely amazing. And what was Woolworth's? A department store? Are you kidding me? You're gonna build a building like this? No way. Absolutely amazing. And just look at all this back here too. Everything with the Antiquitech antennas. And the Singer building in New York City, 1909. Again, how old do you think this building is? You think this building was built a couple years before this photo? I don't think so. This is 1909. Again, this is a 100-year-old building. Even if we were generously conservative, we would say it's 50 years old. And of course, all these buildings get torn down. Look at the intricacy up here. How, in this time period, are you going to build like this? And again, it's not built in 1909. Even though, we oftentimes read the stories for these buildings and, they tell us they're built and oftentimes demolished 20 or 30 years later. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. This is something else. Philadelphia City Hall. Again, a ridiculous designation. We didn't realize that America was as beautiful as Europe. Here Americans travel to Europe to see glorious architecture without realizing that every major city in America has glorious European Greco-Roman architecture in our backyard. Look at this. And they're going to tell us that this is the City Hall? Are you kidding me? I mean, let's be logical again. A government, municipality, City Hall. If somebody would even propose to build something like this, they would probably be fired, even today. And there's not the resources for it. You're going to believe this is a city hall? And it was always, if the building was just extra glorious, they would call it a city hall. Now, they couldn't call this a post office. It's just too beautiful to call a post office. So this has to be a city hall. Look at this. Look at this cathedral right here. I mean, show this picture to somebody and say, where do you think you are? I'm not going to say Philly. And, this makes me just want to go to Philly right now. Right now. I hope all of this is still here. Please let me know. And Park Row Building in New York City. Just look at this neighborhood. Columns on it. Look at this style of building. Imperial. Absolutely imperial. The peak of greatness. And then here come our reset people. First in horses, then little buggies. In bewilderment amongst this glory. The Equitable Life Building of New York City. Oh, of course. What is Equitable Life? Insurance company? It looks identical to the few post offices we were looking at earlier. Look at these portholes like speakers all around buildings designed for much greater purposes. Now let's go to Wisconsin, why don't we? Oh yes. You think of cows and fields and cheese in Wisconsin? Well, here's 1891, Wisconsin. Absolutely amazing. And, when I finally woke up to these kind of things, I found myself in Salt Lake City, seeing the same architecture. The same weathered, old architecture, as if I'd suddenly woke up out of some dream. This is absolutely amazing. And it reminds me of one of the prior videos I did, and I was showing the archways at the Central Depot. Here's a post office in Kentucky. In 1906, Kentucky. Again, is that what you think of? Not Greece or Rome. Glorious. The exact same style that we see all over the world. Look at this Antiquitech and these portals with these Greek columns and our little signature triangles. This is amazing. In Kentucky. 1906. Post office. Absolutely amazing. A complete joke. Michigan, one of my favorite styles. And when you look at these columns, in whatever city you are, they're the same style as you would see in Russia, in St. Petersburg. That same kind of rosy granite cast column. And these ones are kind of short right here. They've gone with the short column. Atlantic City, New Jersey, the Marlborough. I've touched on this before. One of my favorite buildings that I've ever seen in America. And my birth city, actually. Really, really beautiful. Really futuristic and old world. I mean, this touches on the architecture of the world. I mean, we have so many different styles incorporated in this building that I think, just looking at it seems to shatter the narrative, and I could see why they leveled it. Just amazing. Absolutely amazing. And the Erie County Savings Building in Buffalo. Again, I love Buffalo. And, around the Lake Erie, as I showed in one of my videos, a lot of civilization going on in the older maps, in this particular area. And this is definitely one of these old buildings, not a bank. The Imperial Institute in London. Just amazing. And again, I feel like I'm not shocked to see buildings like this in Europe, or have not been throughout my life. It is more shocking to see them in America, where the narrative doesn't really add up. And now, we are seeing these very buildings, but we're seeing buildings like this in America now built on a skyscraper, where you really can't even appreciate the tops. But we have them. We have them too. They're just sitting on what looks like, a conservative skyscraper, and then you have a top like this, like the Tribune building in Chicago, and dozens and dozens, hundreds. San Francisco, the Call building in 1898. Again, this is a European Greco-Roman super futuristic peak of advancement style. And we can't build like this anymore, and we don't. New York World Building. I've never seen this butte. 1890. Again, this building has to be 100 years old by looking at it. Even at the very least 50, and that would be stupid to say it was 50. This is definitely an old building. And this is really cool. I'm just really loving this little skyscraper Greco-Roman architecture. Especially what we see in the early 1900s, late 1850s from these old photos. I'm just really impressed. Absolutely amazing. These columns all throughout, just fascinating. Penn Station, again, straight out of Greece. And the Chicago Waterworks building that I touched on in one of my last videos. Just silly. Silly to build a waterworks tower this way. Very castle-like. Absolutely a castle. And this one was just absolutely amazing. I'm glad we got to this. The Iowa City General Hospital. Really. Probably, besides the post offices, probably one of the most ridiculous designations I've ever seen. This would be worth driving to Iowa to check out. Just blown away. A little cathedral on top of this hospital. Really fascinating and really ridiculous. And finally, I'll just wrap it up with my little Saltaire here in my backyard. Just amazing. A power-generating power plant, I believe. Salt water is conductive for electricity, and just really beautiful, 20 miles out of the major city in the middle of nowhere, But really, I just feel blessed to be able to see this photo. So that's it for today. I do hope you enjoyed the video. Have a blessed day. Please like, comment, and subscribe.